As the NFL draft comes and goes every single year, I feel like there are so many good wide receivers who are taken in the middle chunk of the draft. Whether it's a random guy from southeastern Missouri State, a guy from Louisville, or some guy at Bama who was a little bit underwhelming, there's always some gems and some really interesting stories that take place in that middle part of the draft. This year is no different, and someone who I want to spotlight is Jamari Thrash. After being under-recruited coming out of high school, Thrash would really help the Georgia State program get on the map, and in his 1 year with Louisville, had one of the best single seasons in Louisville football history, helped the Cardinals reach the ACC championship, and now could be a secret weapon for the Cleveland Browns this upcoming fall. Thrash has had a pretty crazy journey, and today I want to introduce you to who he is. We're to go through his recruitment, how he did at Georgia State, how he did at Louisville, and why everyone is so excited for him to get into the Browns organization. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Jamari Thrash. In order to understand how Thrash got to this point, we first need to go back in time. Growing up in LaGrange, Georgia, Thrash was the fifth of 6 children. Thrash said that his uncle is the one who helped usher his love for the game of football. He said, quote, "I didn't really pay attention to sports or anything until I started hanging around him. He was probably the first coaching presence I've had in my life. He was always wanting to work on different things athletically with me at a young age. Sadly, he passed away before he ever got to see me play at any sort of high level." Thrash began his high school career at LaGrange High School, where he would spend his first 2 years before a coaching change, as well as a change in the offense that led him to transfer. He said, quote, "They wanted to run the wing T offense and put me at running back. And I said, look, loyalty is a big thing to me, so I gave it a shot, but I knew pretty quickly that it wasn't something that was best suited for me. They were running that old type of offense, and it just didn't suit what Jamari brought to the table," his dad said. Thrash would end up transferring to his biggest rival, Troup County. In his junior year, he caught 61 passes for over 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. In terms of his recruitment, he popped onto the scouts' radar pretty quickly. It did not take long upon arrival at Troup County for any staff member, coach, or player to single out number 12. Already, at the time, he was considered a 3-star recruit, and many were keeping an eye on Jamari Thrash as a potential riser. He'd play alongside super recruit Kobe Hudson, and the two were must-watch TV. Thrash got more than a dozen college football programs offering him, and he'd have a chance to now play at the next level. He said, quote, "I have 15 offers right now, and my biggest offers are Troy, UAB, UNLV, Georgia State, and South Alabama. It's like a top 5, but my recruitment is still wide open." An in-state program was positioning itself to remain on Thrash's list throughout the process, but at first, the Georgia State Panthers were not exactly sold on him. This isn't bad for a guy who Coach Elliott said he wasn't even sure he wanted to recruit after a first visit. He said, quote, "When we were recruiting him, he never said a whole lot. I was like, I don't know about Thrash, he doesn't have that big competitive personality I like. He was really quiet." That just turned out to be Jamari's nature, as once he got familiar with the staff and the college atmosphere, his personality began to emerge. He also could potentially emerge in their offense at some point. Thrash said, quote, "They tell me how they see me in their offense, and they tell me I'm a big playmaker and can make plays at a high level." He wanted to play wide receiver, but a position change could actually get him to the Power 5 level, perhaps on defense. He said, quote, "I talked to Syracuse, and I know a lot of schools are looking at me in the secondary. They tell me I've got great hips, and I have the size to be a safety." He would eventually sign with Georgia State, though, over offers from Arkansas State, Georgia Southern, Nevada, South Alabama, and a couple of other small programs. Why? He said, quote, "Georgia State was always consistent with me. They came to my high school, they came to all my games, my basketball games even, so they just made me feel really comfortable, and it was only an hour up the road." Thrash was an underrated guy who was going under the radar and would have a huge chip on his shoulder when he would arrive at Georgia State. He said, quote, "I wasn't a high-profile guy, and I wasn't highly recruited by Power 5 schools. I had lower division schools, I had an offer from Nevada, and I think I had about every school in the Sun Belt, but there really wasn't any interest in me from those bigger schools." According to 24/7 Sports, Thrash was the 3-star recruit, the number 200 wideout, and the 1,679th player in the class of 2019. His odds of making it big were slim, his odds of making it to a Power 5 school were even slimmer, and his chances of making it to the NFL were pretty much non-existent. But after a great career at Georgia State, everything would change. But first, how did that all happen? When Thrash would arrive at Georgia State in 2019, he would decide to redshirt and would appear in 3 games, catching 2 passes for 17 yards. 2020 would not be much better. As for the Panthers that year, he caught 9 passes for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. So far, it was a little bit slow, but eventually he ended up making it work. No longer was he a guy just trying to distinguish himself from others in a room full of receivers, and he became the guy leading the way. He started to break out in 2021 as he caught 32 passes for 452 yards and 3 total touchdowns. This was his big break. They lost their top receivers in Sam Pinckney and Cornelius McCoy to injuries, so that's when Jamari Thrash became the guy. Sean Elliott said, quote, "This day and age is all about opportunity. His opportunity came, and he took really good advantage of it, pushing himself very hard." His breakout season obviously included a team-high 32 catches, and his first career 100-yard receiving game came in a win over Arkansas State. On paper, it seemed like he was just really good, but behind the scenes, he had put on a ton of work. He set a great example as he showed up to practice every day early, and would go all out no matter what, even if he wanted to do something else. He said, quote, "I had to go look in the mirror, knowing they're counting on me, and that guys are watching me to see what I'm going to do." Going into his final year, Thrash improved his ability to catch the football, and he believed he was in for his best season yet as a Panther. One of the major reasons why he was so confident was because he had a great relationship with starting quarterback Darren Granger. The duo was back for another season, and Thrash would end up going insane in his final year at Georgia State. In week 1, they played against South Carolina, and he caught 4 passes for 70 yards, and in week 2, he caught 5 passes for 53 yards against North Carolina. He put up decent stats against good competition, and then had the best game of his career. In a loss to Charlotte, he caught 10 passes for 213 yards and a touchdown, and now he was becoming a star. While they would lose to Coastal Carolina and start at 0-4, he would help them right in the ship a little bit. He caught a touchdown against Georgia Southern 2 weeks later, and then finished the year strong with touchdowns against Old Dominion, Southern Miss, James Madison, and Marshall. In particular, those last couple games were great, as he had those 2 scores against Southern Miss, and had 9 catches for 164 yards against Yale Monroe, 4 catches for 136 yards against James Madison, and then he went out with 10 catches for 167 yards and a touchdown against Marshall. While Georgia State missed the bowl game, Thrash was still a really good player. The Panthers only made 2 bowl games in the first 9 years of their existence, and he helped them get to 3 of them. The recruitment of a player like Thrash really helped change the fortune of the program, and he said, quote, "I have seen it grow since my freshman year. We're going to do a lot more with the media, and the recruits have started to come around more and more. Just seeing the program grow from my freshman year to now has been a lot, and we've gotten a lot better." He became the top wide receiver in the Sun Belt for receiving yards, and was an honorable mention All-America after the year. After achieving a ton, he decided it was time to take it to the next level, and chose to enter the portal, where he would find a decent home. In his 4 years as a Panther, he caught 104 passes for 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns, and his recruitment in the portal would be quite interesting. Where would he end up going? Well, he said, quote, "I got in the portal pretty late, and I entered on Tuesday, and it closed that following Monday. So, I had a lot of schools that were blowing up my phone. Eventually he was down to Auburn and Louisville, but ended up choosing the Cardinals. When he committed to Louisville that January, he loved Jeff Brom's offense, and he thought he'd be joining a perfect fit." He said, quote, "I looked at his offense and looked at the production and the receivers that were produced in his offense, and it was always good, and I felt like I could be one of those type of guys." Thrash joined a transfer group that included Kevin Coleman, Jimmy Callaway, and Jaden Thompson, but he was always expected to be the guy. On the first day of practice, he was really nervous being out there, but by the second or third day, he settled in, and Louisville's receiver coach said, quote, "Oh wow, we got a big time player with this kid." As spring would come to a close, Thrash looked like he was going to be the future, and had a good relationship with Jack Plummer. He transferred to Louisville to put up big stats at a big school, play against better competition, and get to the NFL, and he played in his first big primetime game against Georgia Tech. He'd end up putting his name out there in that first game, as in a comeback win, he caught 7 passes for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. The following week, he also had 2 touchdowns against Murray State, and then went crazy for 4 catches for 159 yards and a touchdown, and a fun win over Indiana. So far, Louisville was now 3-0, and Thrash would just be getting started. He caught a touchdown in a win over Boston College, helped them beat NC State, and then in a primetime matchup with number 10 Notre Dame, helped the Cardinals have their biggest win in nearly half a decade, as they upset the number 10 Irish behind his 8 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. Sadly, Louisville's perfect season would come to a close the following week, as on the road against Pitt, he caught 9 passes for 120 yards, but they lost 38-21, and this was a huge upset. Luckily, Louisville would end up bouncing back, as he catch 7 passes in a win over number 20 Duke, 3 passes in a win over Virginia, and then 1 catch on the road against Miami. Louisville was now 10-1, and he'd play in his first Commonwealth Cup game. Against Kentucky, they ended up losing 38-31 after some last-second drama, but he caught 6 passes in that game. His final collegiate football game would come in the ACC Championship, as on a huge stage against number 4 Florida State, He caught 7 passes for 57 yards, but they ended up losing. In his 1 year with Louisville, he caught 63 passes for 858 yards and 7 total touchdowns, making it one of the best single seasons for a Cardinals receiver ever. Thrash was definitely a star, and he was now going to get a chance to play on Sundays. According to NFL Mock Database, he was a projected 5th round pick and the 136th best prospect in the 2024 draft. How it ended up happening? Well, he would fall a little bit, but really not that much. Eventually, the Cleveland Browns would take him at pick number 156 overall, and he would go in the 5th round. He'd now be going from Georgia to Louisville to the city of Cleveland, and Jamari Thrash will now have an opportunity to play in a Cleveland Browns offense that could use a little bit of an extra spark. Thrash has produced everywhere he's been. He's an extremely hard worker, has stayed out of trouble, and should have both the athleticism and skill set to make it work in the NFL. Will he be a big-time superstar? Probably not, but can he be a solid 3rd option? I think so. The Browns director of player personnel said, quote, "He's a competitive kid. He's had production inside and out throughout his college career, and he's a good playmaker with the ball in his hands. We're excited to add him to the room and let him compete." So far, he'll join a receiving core that includes Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy, and I expect Thrash to be the 4th option on the team, and could even jump up a 3rd if one of those guys gets injured. But I think the best part about Thrash that makes him employable at the next level is that he knows Coach Brom's offense really well. He runs a pro-style offense that produced receivers such as Rondale Moore, Charlie Jones, and David Bell, and it looks like Thrash is going to be the next guy there. He got a chance to learn an NFL offense while he was at Louisville, so he should be a step ahead of his peers who are coming in the same class, and I think at the Browns he'll have an opportunity. He'll also be going under the radar, so there's not ridiculously high expectations, and I expect Thrash to be a decent player for him, and could elevate his play, and I think at his peak could be a top 2 receiver on the team, and most likely will be a 3rd option on a team. But what do you guys think? If you're a Cleveland Browns, Louisville Cardinals, or Georgia State Panthers fans, what do you think of Jamari Thrash? And here's another rookie I could cover next. Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.